Hey, welcome back to the Humble and Dope Show. My name's Chris, back with another video, and just wanted to talk about something that was actually requested, and I wanted to try to carefully think about how I want to approach this topic because I know it's a very sensitive topic, and I want to be mindful because I know folks, both sides of the aisle, watch these videos. So let me watch this and get into it.
One other thing that I want to say about the ICE raids that we're seeing, and I want to make a comparison, and that is when I talk with my students about the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850 and how it pushed the nation closer to the brink of civil war because they began snatching people out of communities, people who had lived in communities or people who had escaped slavery, and my students are like, oh, so these people who came out against the Fugitive Slave Act were all abolitionists, and I said, no. These are people who could not countenance the idea of their neighbors being taken from them. The idea
that is such a good point.
The fundamental civic unit in this nation is neighbor. And that is the people who live in your community. Are you prepared to see them treated in this way? And people simply were not.
I think the civic response to what we're seeing there is very encouraging in the same way, right? That as an abstraction, oh, I support mass deportation, get them all out of here. As a reality, your neighbor.
Your neighbor.
If you guys been watching news, you probably just heard about, the protests going around the country. ICE has been been going about and just rounding up folks, whether they're criminals or not, whether they've committed crimes or not. Let me rephrase that. Like violent crimes, let me rephrase that. And they've been doing it very, almost indiscriminately, and if it's to be believed, they've also incorporated bounty hunters, people that are usually going after people that are on bail or supposed to be for a court, things like that. And it's really, it's hard to watch because it's one thing if, if it's just, hey, we need to strengthen the border, we need to reform what's going on down south, we need to work with Mexico and all these other Latin American, Central American countries to try to work together to try to solve this migration, illegal immigration problem. That'd be one thing. But there's almost an intentional cruelty to how these things are being done. And mind you, I think it was a little over 3 million people were deported underneath President Obama. And people would bring that up and say, oh, well, did you have a problem with that then? I think most people wouldn't say they had a problem with it, but I think no one would accuse Obama of also going out of his way to demonize and denigrate, people in that community or associated with that community. People would say oh, they don't contribute to America, and they pay, I think, over $80 billion in taxes, and they don't qualify for a lot of government programs. And they are a big part of a lot of industries, particularly a lot of labor-intensive industries, things like construction and farm work and And there's even folks that are being picked up that are American citizens that are here legally, that aren't here in green cards, here on visas, that are being deported. And there's this mandate, I think it's 3,000 a day, that's the goal. And instead of going after criminals, which takes time because you have to investigate and you gotta weigh in what's the danger, are there gonna be arms, right? Which is understandable, you wanna make sure you do your due diligence. Going at the people waiting in front of like Home Depot and whatnot, people working on farms, people like gardeners and it's really indiscriminate. And how I knew it was getting bad, I think it was like 80 Canadians was also getting caught up in ICE raids, which meaning that it's not even limited to the Latin American or Hispanic community anymore. And, I think what concerns me seeing things like that and things like so-called alligator Alcatraz, and they're selling merchandise and even bringing food trucks of with like Mexican food trucks and the like, and it's really this really cruel hypocrisy. It's one thing if it was framed as like it's this thing that we don't enjoy doing it, but we feel like we have to for America's safety, to just relishing in it. I think, I forget which elected official, I think like Laura, somebody, I think they were bragging about on Twitter or X, they're just saying like, oh, we got 65 million people that we can feed the alligators. And it was really almost demonic, because that's the total number, including citizens of Latino folks or Hispanic folks in this country. And and I think the sad thing is it's such a misrepresentation of the faith when you got people that proclaim to be Christians take joy in not only going after vulnerable people, but denigrating them in the process too. You can make the argument saying, hey, it's right what they're doing, it's a necessary thing that needs to be done. Or if you're on the side that's like, hey, we need to support these people, sanctuary cities. I'm not saying lean one way or the other, but any decently empathetic person can say that how it's being talked about by folks in power, how it's being talked about in the media, how is it even being talked about by elected officials, it's wrong. It's in taking joy in the suffering of your neighbors, especially neighbors on the other side of that invisible line down south. Like, it's a reminder that legality and morality aren't always interchangeable. Maybe less than a century ago, 120,000 plus Japanese Americans were forced into internment camps, taken from their homes, from their businesses, from their communities, and they were put into internment camps on U.S. soil without due process. And even after they were released, a lot of them lost their homes, a lot of them lost their farmlands, a lot of their communities were basically messed up, and a lot of that devastation that happened to a lot of black communities on highways were being paved right through them. It's unfortunately it lines up with America historically, what's being done, where it's like beating up on people, on a group of people, on a community, particularly the undocumented community, which on average commits less crime than American citizens, takes far less benefits, as far as welfare programs and stuff compared to American citizens, despite contributing almost $80 billion in taxes every year. And it's just, I don't know what more to say. It's just, and this is, mind you, this is a very nuanced situation. I'm not saying that one side's right, one side's wrong. I'm just saying taking joy in denigrating your neighbor, is wrong. Because the people that you think don't belong here are still made in the image of God. To constantly beat up people that can't afford legal recourse, they can't afford to sue the government. The fact that people that are, doing these pickups that are not identifying themselves, they don't have badges and stuff, or they're not showing it. There's no names or badge numbers, anything like police or anything that identifies them. It's scary, and people are already taking advantage. People that are pretending to be ICE are breaking into people's homes to rob them. People are already using it to kidnap folks and, sexually assault folks as well. And it seems like it's just, I don't know, it just seems like they're, going at it as ask for forgiveness, not for permission, but they're not even asking for forgiveness. It's just, what are you going to do about it? So, all I can say is pray at justice, like real, actual justice, and not just performative justice by elected officials doing these weird culture war, talk show, influencer, whatever. Just pray that true justice prevails, and, do what you can to be there for your neighbor too, because if they can go after people indiscriminately without repercussions, who's to say that you can't possibly be next? And that's a scary country to live in. So again, trying to be as sensitive on such a difficult topic and trying to be respectful of people on both sides of the aisle that watch the show. But yeah, let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, and pray that things get better, because America should be better than this.